This week on the video version of The Business of Tech, customers go third-party for information, transparency in pay is becoming a trend, privacy laws progress in Colorado and Connecticut, tape backup on the rise, is fail-fast slowing, authentication takes center stage in 3 stories, and observability data problems. All this and more. Hit those like and subscribe buttons and help us pay the bills, and here are this week's stories. Let's hit a couple of the earnings numbers. Everyone made a lot of money. Microsoft posted double-digit growth again, with revenue up 18% and the profit representing 8% more year over year. Microsoft is focused on the server and cloud resources revenue up 29% and Microsoft Cloud up 32%. And despite the lack of people in offices, their office business was up 12% in the commercial space. Even LinkedIn is growing like crazy at 34% this quarter. Alphabet reports Q1 revenue up 23% from the same period last year. Revenue from Google Cloud is up, reaching $5.8 billion compared to $4 billion last year. Google Cloud Platform specifically was cited as greater than Google Cloud in general. Amazon announced it lost $3.8 billion on revenues of $116.4 billion in the quarter ending March 31st. The latter figure is a gain of 7% year over year. AWS was cited as growing 37% year over year in the last quarter. I'll use this as an opportunity to look at these companies' relative placements in the cloud market too. TechCrunch posted a comparison. The Q1 2022 market share review of the cloud infrastructure market gives Amazon 33% share, Microsoft 22%, Google 10%, and the following 10 companies combined at 21%. The big 3 are 65% of the market. It's Microsoft that is slowly gaining ground. Finally, a quick look at equipment. According to Counterpoint Research, global PC shipments fell 4.3% year over year in Q1 2022 to reach 78.7 million units. Apple and Dell grew their shipments, everyone else slowed. IDC also finds a 3.9% decline in worldwide tablet shipments. Why do we care? The interest is all about cloud businesses. I cite Follow the Money often. Well, why are these 3 making crazy money? Cloud. The focus on Microsoft here. Why did they redo their partner program recently? Cloud, cloud, and more cloud. I know I get pushback from some listeners here. I'll cede the timetable as debatable. I won't cede that the conversion to cloud is happening. The growth isn't because of hardware, that's for sure. Microsoft is adding a free, built-in VPN to its Edge browser. Called Edge Secure Network, Microsoft is currently testing the Cloudflare-powered VPN service and says it will roll it out to the public as part of a security upgrade. Data is limited to 1 gigabyte per month, and users would need to be signed into a Microsoft account, which notably can track usage. Why do we care? This felt important due to a subtle network design shift happening with Microsoft and Apple. Apple has its privacy relay features in beta, and now Microsoft is rolling out its version here. How long until users can disappear behind these products, even within organizations? I could call this another version of Shadow IT, and I think I just did. Here's an interesting Gartner prediction. By 2025, 60% of customers will seek service in third-party sources of information not owned by the company. Quoting the press release, currently, younger customers already use third-party information sources more frequently than older consumers, suggesting that this trend will increase as their share of the total customer base grows. 66% of millennials and 56% of Gen Z customers reported using a third-party source before contacting official service channels, compared to just 25% of baby boomers who did so. The survey also found that 58% of younger customers, millennials and Gen Z, indicated they trust third-party information sources as much as company-provided information because they find the information easier to use or less biased. To resolve service issues, customers are increasingly turning to third-party sources of information, such as on YouTube or Reddit, said Eric Keller, Senior Director of Research in the Gartner Customer Service and Support Practice. This will further complicate service journeys and erode the control service and support leaders have over experiences. However, this trend also brings opportunities to help customers access trustworthy peer-to-peer support with limited investment from the company. Why do we care? I had two reactions here. First, third-party validation will remain a helpful value add IT providers will bring to their customers. That seems solid. The second is the generational divide. As the decision-making is done more and more by younger customers, they'll be seeking this information in new places, many online. I've made my e-commerce case several times before and will layer on thinking about online education and content building. My data from my shows validates this. It's younger than the typical demographic one might expect in the IT service space. So how is your organization positioned here? CompTIA released a new report, Workplace and Learning Trends, citing that 73% of human resources professionals expect hiring to become even more challenging over the next 12 months. 2/3 believe that persistent hiring constraints may become the new normal. In case you missed it, starting November 1st, job listings in New York City require a maximum and minimum salary for the role. While not the first law here, Colorado has one and Washington State just passed one, with about a dozen more states considering ones, it's a very high-profile one. The date was pushed back over business objections, arguing that competition for workers is stiff and they want the flexibility on pay. Still, the law is coming. And per the Employment Cost Index released at the end of last week, total compensation for all workers in the U.S. in Q1 was up 4.5% from last year. This measures how much employers pay for workers' wages and benefits. Total comp in leisure and hospitality sectors rose 8.4% year over year. Why do we care? There's a solid argument to be made about getting ahead of certain trends. I happen to believe this transparency one is going to be good for workers. Making your organization more worker-friendly is a crucial strategy. Thus, why not get ahead of this? Lean into the transparency trend now. As with many ideas like this, many won't. Speaking of one tracking trends, this one seems easy enough to be a leader on. The US, EU, and 32 other countries announced a Declaration for the Future of the Internet that lays out priorities for an open, free, global, interoperable, reliable, and secure Internet. It highlights goals like affordability, net neutrality, and removing illegal content without curtailing free expression, although it offers few specifics for achieving those goals. Signatories also agree to uphold the principles of net neutrality and, quote, refrain from blocking or degrading access to lawful content, services, and applications on the Internet. I mentioned Colorado earlier. The state AG recently released pre-rulemaking considerations for that state's Privacy Act, and the office is seeking public feedback. Specifically, comments about universal opt-out, the requirements about consent, and dark patterns. Have comments? There's a form. Finally, on April 28th, the Connecticut General Assembly passed SB 6, an act concerning personal data privacy and online monitoring, which is currently waiting for the governor's signature. This law is similar to privacy laws in Colorado, Virginia, and Utah. Why do we care? The Internet Declaration feels like a definition of the Western Internet in a splinternet world. We'll see if it's codified in law. Because on the law front, it should make Connecticut another state soon with privacy laws. Colorado gives some perspective on the ongoing nature of lawmaking. Once a law is passed, rules and enforcement is a continuing process, eventually also settled in the court. There's a reason lawyers have continuing education, and technologists will need the same. In, of course that's still around news, it was a record year for tape storage sales. Yes, old school tape backup. According to an LTO sales report using data from the companies responsible for manufacturing LTO tapes, 148 exabytes of total tape capacity was shipped in 2021. That's far more than 2020, where 105 exabytes was shipped, or the previous record year of 2019 with 114 exabytes of capacity. Why do we care? It's easy as technologists to focus on the latest and greatest. Remember, the right tool for the right job. Tape is sticking around because of ransomware. It's not the only way to solve the problem, it's just battle-tested. Know your own biases and focus on the customer's needs. That strategy is proven and reliable for a reason. Some interesting new dynamics in digital transformation. I'm quoting from Tech Republic. In 2020, more than 1/3 of companies at 36% expected digital to account for 75% or more of their revenue within 3 years. According to Closing the Acceleration Gap Toward Sustainable Digital Transformation report by Workday. By 2021, only 13% of organizations said the same, a figure that aligns with pre-pandemic digital aspirations, 12% in 2019. Fewer businesses are adopting a fail-fast mentality, 53% in 2021, 77% in 2020, which suggests the culture of experimentation that gathered during the pandemic has lost momentum. The findings reveal that while finance, HR, and IT leaders recognized the importance of digital transformation, 55% said the demands of the business consistently or often outpace their digital strategy. As a result, the digital acceleration gap is widening, where businesses' needs are changing faster than the technology, processes, and culture required to keep pace. Why do we care? Is the fail-fast methodology slowing, or is this more a factor of coming into more uncertain economic times? I'm more inclined to think it's a second, with a bit more cautiousness with a combination of the pandemic leading into the post-pandemic inflation hangover. The big reason to care is aligning your approach with your customers. Let's note the have and have not gap. Those embracing digital will continue to pull ahead, and the risk for those who remain overly cautious is that the gap may become insurmountable. That said, a massive change may not be the approach to use, and like all engagements, you'll need to customize to where they are. PC Matic, endpoint security built on a zero-trust default deny foundation. Finally, a lightweight, simple to deploy, and easy to manage approach to application allow listing. It's the perfect complement to your current security stack. No minimums and no annual contracts. Find out more by visiting pcmatic.com/MSP today. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, bought access to location data harvested from tens of millions of phones in the United States to perform an analysis of compliance with curfews, track patterns of people visiting K-12 schools, and specifically monitor the effectiveness of policy in the Navajo Nation, according to CDC documents obtained by Motherboard. The documents also show that although the CDC used COVID-19 as a reason to buy access to the data more quickly, it intended to use it for more general CDC purposes. The CDC used the data for monitoring curfews, with the documents saying that SafeGraph's data has been critical for ongoing response efforts such as hourly monitoring of activity in curfew zones or detailed counts of visits to participating pharmacies for vaccine monitoring. The documents date from 2021. Unrelated, NextGov has a report of the FBI also doing searches against citizens' data. Using Section 702, the approximate number of searches on U.S. citizens' electronic data was about 3.4 million, all without a warrant. This is from the 2021 Annual Statistical Transparency Report. Searches using provisions outlined in Section 702 cannot be levied against U.S. citizens and do not require warrants. What the most recent report reveals, however, was the number of queries the FBI conducted on U.S. citizens using information gathered from Section 702 acquired information obtained by the National Security Agency. Despite the large volume of searches the FBI conducted, the agency did not open an investigation related to a Section 702 query on a U.S. person. Why do we care? Without any specific data privacy laws, this is legal in the U.S. Upset? Don't hate the player, hate the game. GitHub announced on Wednesday that they will require users who upload code to enable one or more two-factor authentication forms by the end of 2023 to continue to use the platform. GitHub's internal research shows that only around 16.5% of active users, roughly 1 in 6, currently enable the enhanced security measures on their accounts. Microsoft reminded everyone yesterday that it will start disabling basic authentication in random tenants worldwide on October 1st, 2022. While I'm on authentication, Microsoft, Google, and Apple all committed on Thursday that they are expanding support for the FIDO Alliance and will implement passwordless FIDO single sign-on standards across macOS and Safari, Android and Chrome, and Windows and Edge. The goal? Eliminate passwords and instead use a stored FIDO credential called a passkey to unlock the device. With this extended commitment, users will be able to automatically access their passkeys on many of their devices, even new ones, without having to re-enroll every account. Additionally, people will be able to use FIDO authentication on their mobile device to sign in to an app or website on a nearby device, regardless of the OS platform or browser they're running. This one from The Record, cybersecurity analysts published information Monday about a potentially severe unpatched bug in code for the Internet of Things devices because they want the public's help in fixing the problem, which could affect technology used in critical infrastructure. The flaw could allow attackers to perform DNS poisoning attacks against a target device, confusing how it recognizes activity from the DNS system. The company said it went public with information about the unpatched vulnerability because even after a long disclosure process, the maintainer of the uclibc library was unable to develop a fix. Nozomi's network goal is to work with the maintainer of the library and the broader community in support of finding a solution, the researchers wrote. And in trends news, the Washington Post reported this week about the increase of attacks on Russia due to the war in Ukraine. While initially, experts expected the cyber attacks to come from Russia against the rest of the world, particularly the US, instead of Russia itself. Attackers have gone after personal financial data, defaced websites, and mined for government secrets in email releases. One recent survey showed that more passwords and other sensitive data from Russia were dumped onto the open web in March than information from any other country. Why do we care? A passwordless future should be an exciting one for two reasons. First, it's a massive win for the risk profiles of users. Second, it's a real opportunity for customers to invest in something that helps security and makes their lives better. Bring on the passwordless future. Some critical small business data from ADP. While the U.S. private sector created nearly 250,000 new jobs last month, employers with fewer than 50 workers actually shed jobs. Couple that with two other pieces of data. According to the Small Business Administration, small businesses account for 40% of U.S. economic activity. And according to the latest NFIB's Small Business Survey, owners turned more pessimistic in March and cited inflation as the single most important problem they face. Thanks to Axios for this one. Why do we care? My own bias skews SMB, and note that a lot of my listener base focuses here. This data point colors some of the other ones I've reported on recently and layers another of complexity for owners. Hiring is not only tricky, then there's retention, and now concerned customers may be shrinking. I'm slightly less concerned about the IT providers themselves than I am about the impact on the customer base. If all of your customers shed just one job, that's a pretty sizable haircut if you bill by the user or by the device. So take heed. Microsoft has released a study they conducted about the repairability of their own devices. This after an October 2021 agreement to make its Surface devices more repairable and fund this independent study. Some key findings. For the 7 devices studied, the study showed that repairing the product instead of device replacement can yield up to a 92% reduction in potential waste generation and GHG emissions. Greater than 20% of the net sustainability benefits of repair are determined by the transportation method and logistics for delivering devices to repair facilities. Mail-to repair services offer the lowest GHG emissions, even over long distances, compared to other transportation methods, such as consumers driving their own vehicles to repair facilities. Why do we care? Looking at the benefits of right to repair is encouraging. That data point about mail-to repair services intrigues me. How many providers consider how using mail-to services versus rolling trucks might be more efficient and better for the environment? Or should there be more options offered to customers? In the context of state CIOs adding diversity to their priorities list, the National Association of State Chief Information Officers started studying the issue and published their first results recently. In a recent poll of its members, the organization found that 60% feel they have a diverse workforce, while 93% said their offices offered an inclusive workplace. But diversity is very broadly defined, with some demographic breakdowns outpacing others. Gender diversity, for instance, is more widespread than other factors like race and ethnicity. Half of all CIOs said they didn't know what percentage of job applicants can be considered diverse, while 31% estimated that 10 to 40% of applicants are. But there appears to be a concerted effort among CIOs to grasp the data better. While only 23% said their offices currently have an internal position focused on diversity and inclusion in recruitment and retention, many are planning to add those roles. And in a report from the Talent Board, women and people of color rated their 2021 candidate experiences more positively than older candidates, male candidates, and white candidates did. This is thought to be related to adding more inclusive language and examples of diversity to their career sites, candidate communications, job ads, and other marketing collateral for their employment brands. Talent Board also dove into ratings from candidates who didn't get hired. This accounted for 87% of the candidates and more than 127,000 individuals in North America alone. It found that black males who were more likely to refer others had a 120% higher Net Promoter Score rating, which asks respondents to rate the likelihood that they would recommend a company, product, or service than white males. The report stated that black women who were more likely to refer others had a 54% higher NPS rating than white women. The results are similar for Hispanic and Asian women and men. And this data point from Computer Weekly. It's not important for men to be involved in integrating women into tech teams, according to 44% of tech workers. The annual Computer Weekly Tech Target Salary Survey found that the number of people who said men need to be involved in integrating women into IT teams has faced a significant drop over the past few years, from 57% in 2019-2020 to 40% in 2020-2021 to only 23% in this year's figures. Respondents to the IT salary survey are predominantly mid to senior level IT managers aged 35 or above, and more than 80% of those who answered the survey this year were men. Why do we care? Wonder why there's a diversity problem in tech? Well, if it's not prioritized, there's no change. That last survey is pretty striking, and frankly, I found it a little gross and sad. Then compare against the positive recruiting data shown by those who invest in programs. And I'll note that there is a shift. It may not be nearly as fast as desired, but it is there. And a follow-up to a story from earlier this week, Connecticut has become the 5th state with a data privacy law. The state has a rule that passed bills become law automatically 5 days after they are passed during a legislative session, even without the governor's signature. And another follow-up, I mentioned the data the CDC used to analyze the pandemic, but didn't mention the company behind it, SafeGraph. Protocol dove into their business and noted how much of the data doesn't have commercial uses and is generally used by researchers. SafeGraph announced it would remove the data from its online self-serve data platform and the API through which it distributes data to customers. This led to concerns from researchers trying to see the impacts of changes in laws. The company is now considering options such as changing how it approaches data access, say only vetted researchers access to some data, with the broader public having more limited access. Why do we care? I maintain there's a business to be had in data management, and SafeGraph gives an example. These are complicated issues and, in that mystery, margin. Think of the complexity they're considering and the various ways to approach it. Then consider how to guide and plan. For many companies, this will not be a core skill. It's why I like this space. And from NewStack, according to ESG, 71% of companies believe their observability data, meaning metrics, logs, and traces, is growing at a concerning rate. Yet outcomes are getting worse, not better. And according to a study from PagerDuty, critical incident volume across the platform rose 19% from 2019 to 2020, and they're continuing to grow at an ever faster rate. Why do we care? A small data point, but one I wanted to highlight. Observability is the new monitoring. Monitoring is based on gathering predefined sets of metrics or logs and then allowing teams to watch and understand the state of their systems. Observability is based on exploring properties and patterns not defined in advance, allowing teams to debug their systems. This is an and, not an or. And I'd be remiss if I didn't note how little attention observability gets in the MSP space versus monitoring. So before most providers have even considered this, those that do consider it are struggling to get their hands around it. Start thinking about observability too.
Thanks for your time and attention. Time is a finite resource, and I really value you giving me some of yours. If you like this video, you can let me know with a like of the video, and even more valuable, hitting the subscription button. My content is all free, and I use metrics like subscriptions to pay the bills, so it has real value. The content here is produced under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you're interested in more content like this, you can get access to content early via our Patreon at patreon.com/MSPradio. It's our give what you want model where you set the value of what you think the content is worth. If you like this podcast, you can catch it daily as the 5-minute news and commentary show, The Business of Tech, available on all your favorite podcatchers with links at businessof.tech. Just hit that big blue button to subscribe. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen, and I really value the interaction. If you want to say something in the comments, I do respond and watch all that, and I look forward to talking to you next time.